Veltraxis Prime was a city of lights, floating towers, and endless noise. It was home to hundreds of alien species, each with its own language, rules, and way of life. Traders shouted in the markets, flying cars zoomed above, and robots moved cargo across wide platforms. To an outsider, it might look like a dream, but for the poor, the weak, and the forgotten, Veltraxis could be a cold and cruel place. Among the crowd moved a small figure, Kiri. She was a young Threxil girl, only 12 galactic cycles old. Her body was thin, her arms short and covered in smooth green scales. Her large black eyes searched the food stalls with hunger. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her parents had disappeared during the last mining strike, and no one had taken her. And she lived in a tunnel beneath the city and survived on scraps. She saw it. A merchant had just turned his back, placing shiny tubes of nutrient paste on the counter. Kiri moved quickly. She didn't want to steal. But today the pain in her stomach was stronger than her fear. Her tiny fingers reached out and grabbed one of the silver packets. She was about to slip away when a loud alarm buzzed from the stall. "Thief!" shouted the merchant, a thick-bodied alien with long arms and 4 eyes. "Threxil thief!" Security bots flew down instantly, surrounding Kiri with red lights flashing. One grabbed her wrist, and she screamed. A crowd gathered, curious and excited. Kiri was pulled to the center of the square. She cried and begged, but no one helped. In Veltraxis, stealing was a serious crime. Even a child could not escape the law. A tall creature in black robes stepped forward. It was a lawkeeper of the Veltraxian tribunal. Its voice echoed from a small device on its chest. "The accused has committed theft, as stated in Code 7A. The punishment is the removal of one upper limb," the crowd murmured. Some nodded in agreement. A few looked away. This was normal here. Law came before mercy. But one person in the crowd did not look away. Captain Jonah Hale stood near the edge, arms crossed, a deep frown on his face. He was human, broad-shouldered with short brown hair and gray eyes that missed nothing. Jonah had served in Earth's Peace Corps and now worked as a security officer on Veltraxis Prime. Humans were still new to the galaxy's politics. Many alien species didn't understand them. They said humans were emotional, too quick to act, and didn't respect tradition. Jonah had heard it all before, but he didn't care what others thought. He stepped forward as the lawkeeper raised a small laser tool. "Wait," Jonah said, his voice firm. The lawkeeper turned slowly. "This is a legal matter, human. You are not part of the tribunal." "She's just a child," Jonah said. "She stole food. Not money, not weapons, just food. Maybe you should ask why she had to steal." The lawkeeper didn't blink. "The reason does not matter. The law is clear." Kiri looked up through tears. She didn't understand Jonah's words fully, but she knew he was speaking for her. Her small body shook. "She won't survive that punishment," Jonah said, taking a step closer. "You cut off her arm, and she'll never recover. She'll lose more than a limb. She'll lose her future," the merchant growled. "Let the law do its job. She stole from me." Jonah turned to him. "And how much was that nutrient pack worth? 10 credits? You want to take her arm for 10 credits? "It's not about the credits," the merchant barked. "It's about respect." Jonah didn't shout. He didn't wave his hands or make a scene. He just stood taller and looked around at the crowd. "Where I come from, we believe in something else," he said. "We believe that justice without kindness is just cruelty with a name." The lawkeeper's fingers hovered over the laser control. "This isn't your planet, human," the official said. "You have no authority here." Jonah's hand moved to his ID badge. He tapped it once. "Actually, I do. Under Concord Rule 5, any peace officer can speak in defense of a minor in emergency cases." The lawkeeper paused. It was an old law, rarely used, but it was still valid. The crowd grew quiet. Jonah looked at Kiri, then back at the tribunal. His eyes narrowed. "If you still plan to take an arm," he said slowly, "then take mine instead." The room fell silent after Captain Jonah Hale's words. "If you still plan to take an arm," he said, "then take mine instead." No one, spoke for a long moment. The tribunal members stared at Jonah, their eyes wide with surprise. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the reaction. The lawkeeper was the first to recover. It adjusted its robes and said, "Human, are you serious? You offer your own arm in place of hers?" Jonah nodded calmly. "I am." Kiri, the young Threxel girl, blinked up at him with wide eyes. She did not understand everything happening, but she felt hope. Someone was standing for her, a human, a stranger. The tribunal whispered among themselves. Veltraxian law was strict and old. Cutting off a limb was not just punishment, it was a warning, a way to keep order. The law had been written centuries ago when violence was common and mercy was rare. One counselor spoke up, a tall alien with silver skin and narrow eyes. "There is a clause in the old texts, equitable substitution. It says that a willing party may take the punishment for another, but only if the victim's guardian agrees and the council permits." The lawkeeper looked to Kiri, but she was too scared to speak. Jonah raised his voice. "I am her guardian now. I accept full responsibility." The other tribunal members exchanged glances. Some frowned, others looked confused. This had never happened before. Never had a foreigner offered their own body in place of an alien child. The council leader, an ancient being known as Ves, slowly rose. "Captain Hale, your offer is unusual but not illegal. The law does allow for substitution under certain conditions." He paused, then added, "However, the punishment must be carried out with honor and full ceremony. There can be no doubt or hesitation." Jonah nodded. "I understand." Kiri looked up at him again. She saw his steady eyes, his calm face. For the first time, she felt safe. The merchant, however, was furious. "This is madness. This human wants to take the punishment for a thief?" Ves turned to the merchant. "The law does not serve only punishment but justice. The human's offer changes the meaning. We will proceed." Security bots moved forward, ready to prepare the punishment chamber. Jonah was taken to a quiet room to ready himself. A doctor came in and examined his arm. "This is a serious matter, Captain," the doctor said. "The technology to remove a limb safely is advanced, but the pain and recovery will be difficult." "Are you certain?" Jonah smiled faintly. "I've made my choice." Meanwhile, Kiri sat with the tribunal, still trembling. She felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. The arm to be removed was not hers. The news of the incident had already begun to spread through Veltrax's prime. Crowds gathered outside the tribunal building, some cheering Jonah's bravery, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Back in the chamber, the council prepared the ceremony. A large device stood in the center, glowing softly. It was designed to remove a limb cleanly and with minimal pain, an ancient Veltraxian invention. Jonah was brought in, his human arm bare and steady. Kiri watched, her eyes full of gratitude. Ves spoke to the crowd. "Today we witness a new kind of justice, one not born from anger or fear but from courage and sacrifice. Let this moment be remembered." Jonah gave a small nod, ready for the procedure. The device hummed, and a soft beam surrounded his arm. In moments, the arm was separated with skill and precision. Jonah did not cry out. His face was calm, his eyes fixed on Kiri. The crowd was silent. Then, slowly, a few people began to clap. Others wiped tears from their eyes. Kiri stepped forward. She reached out and touched the stump where Jonah's arm had been. "Thank you," she whispered. Jonah smiled. "No need to thank me. We are all responsible for each other." The tribunal declared Kiri free from punishment. She was released, with Jonah's protection. Word of the event reached the Galactic Concord, the alliance of planets. Many debated Jonah's actions. Some called him reckless. Others called him a hero. Back at his quarters, Jonah sat quietly. The pain was there, but it was nothing compared to the feeling in his heart. He knew he had changed something, not just for Kiri, but for the future. After the ceremony, Captain Jonah Hale felt a strange mix of pain and peace. His left arm was gone, but he had saved a life, Kiri's life. The small Threxil girl stood beside him, her large eyes wide with wonder and gratitude. The marketplace where the crime had happened was quieter now. Many of the alien citizens were still talking about what they had seen. A human had given his own arm to save a child from punishment. It was a story they would tell for years, but not everyone was happy. The merchant who had caught Kiri stealing was furious. "This is madness," he shouted. "How can a punishment be taken from the criminal and given to someone else? What kind of justice is this?" Some of the Veltraxians agreed. "The law is the law," they said. "If we allow exceptions, chaos will follow." Others, however, felt something had changed. Among the crowd was an older Veltraxian woman named Lana. She had lived through many harsh years under the strict laws of the planet. But watching Jonah's sacrifice, she felt hope. "Maybe," Lana whispered to her friend, "there is more to justice than pain." Jonah was surprised to find his actions causing such deep debate. He had acted on a simple human belief. Kindness is strength. As days passed, Kiri stayed close to Jonah. She followed him everywhere. She wanted to learn about this strange human who had changed her life. One afternoon, while they sat near a quiet river that ran through the city, Kiri asked, "Why did you do it? Why did you give your arm to me?" Jonah looked at her carefully. "Because no one should lose a part of themselves for something as small as stealing food to survive." Kiri thought about this. On Veltraxis, stealing was always punished without question. Mercy was almost unheard of. "But the law," she said softly. "The law," Jonah replied, "is made by people. People can choose to change it." Kiri's eyes grew bright. "Do you think it will change?" Jonah smiled. "I believe it can." News of Jonah's sacrifice traveled far beyond Veltraxis Prime. Stories appeared in many planetary news channels and broadcasts. Humans praised him as a hero who showed the galaxy the meaning of true justice. Aliens debated fiercely. Some leaders worried this would undermine their traditions. Others saw it as a chance to rethink their laws. A council meeting on Veltraxis was called. Leaders from different species gathered to discuss the event. Ves, the ancient council leader who had allowed Jonah's arm to be taken, spoke first. "We have followed our laws for centuries, but perhaps it is time to ask, what is the purpose of punishment?" One counselor argued, "Punishment teaches respect and keeps peace. Without it, people may steal and harm without fear." "But," another answered, "punishment should also heal, not only hurt. We must protect the weak." The debate went on for hours. Meanwhile, Jonah received a message from the Galactic Concord. They asked him to share his story at the next interplanetary summit. Jonah accepted. He knew this was bigger than just one girl or one arm. Back on Veltraxis, Kiri started attending a small school run by humans and aliens working together. She learned new ideas about justice, forgiveness, and hope. She dreamed of becoming a lawyer, someone who could help change unfair laws. One evening, as the twin moons of Veltraxis rose, Jonah and Kiri sat watching the stars. Jonah looked at the sky and said, "Humans believe that even the smallest act of kindness can change the future." Kiri smiled. "I want to be that change." Jonah felt proud. In that moment, he knew his sacrifice was not just about an arm. It was about opening hearts and minds. But not everyone wanted change. Some radicals whispered in dark corners. They believed Jonah's act weakened the law. They planned to show that mercy was dangerous. The story was far from over. The news of Captain Jonah Hale's sacrifice spread beyond Veltraxis Prime like a wave crashing against distant shores. Across star systems and planets, his story was shared and debated. A human willingly gave up his own arm to save an alien child from a harsh punishment. It was a strange and powerful message. On many human worlds, Jonah became a symbol, a quiet hero who showed what humanity could be at its best. News channels told his story with respect, and children in schools learned about the strength of kindness. But the galaxy was large, and not all beings welcomed the change. Far away, on the metallic world of Kranthar, a group of leaders met behind closed doors. They were known as the Traditional Council, guardians of ancient laws and strict punishers of crime. "The humans act as reckless," said one Kranthar leader, a tall, armored figure named Garvek. "It undermines discipline and respect. If others follow this, law and order will collapse." Another council member, a quiet but sharp-eyed being named Zyla, nodded. "Yet, it also opens a door. People are watching. They wonder if mercy might be better than punishment." Back on Veltraxis Prime, the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Some citizens celebrated Jonah's courage, others feared what might come next. The Galactic Concord announced a special summit to discuss the meaning of justice in a changing galaxy. Representatives from many planets and species gathered in the grand halls of the Concord's capital. Jonah was invited to speak. He stood before the crowd, humans, aliens, and robots alike. His missing arm was visible beneath his uniform, but he did not hide it. He began simply, "I am here because I believe justice is more than punishment. It is about fairness, understanding, and mercy." The audience listened intently as Jonah told Kiri's story. The small girl who stole food to survive, the harsh law of Veltraxis Prime, and his choice to give his arm in her place. After he finished, a murmur spread through the hall. One elder alien, a giant with blue skin named Thurok, stood and spoke. "This human's courage shows a new path. We must think carefully about our laws." Another delegate argued, "But mercy must not replace order. Without respect for the law, chaos will grow." The debate continued for hours. Jonah answered questions calmly, explaining how humans had changed their own laws after hard lessons. Meanwhile, Kiri watched from the visitors' gallery. She felt proud of Jonah and of herself. His act had opened her world to new possibilities. Back home, Veltraxis media followed the summit closely. Some shows interviewed citizens. A young Veltraxian boy said, "Maybe punishment isn't the only answer." Lana, the older woman who had spoken softly about hope, started working with other citizens to suggest changes to the legal code. Not everyone was pleased. Radicals on Veltraxis whispered in hidden places. They feared their traditions were slipping away. They believed Jonah's act weakened society's foundation. One night, a small group gathered in the shadows near the marketplace. "We must remind them why the laws exist," said a man with a harsh voice. "But how?" asked another. "We cannot fight a human hero." "Not with weapons," said the man. "With ideas. We will spread fear. We will say mercy is weakness." But even as radicals planned, more citizens called for kindness and change. The story of Jonah and Kiri became a turning point. Schools began teaching about fairness and understanding. Some cities created programs to help those in need instead of punishing them. Kiri worked hard in her studies. She dreamed of becoming a lawyer who could protect others. Jonah, despite his missing arm, returned to his peacekeeping duties. He used new technology to help him. His courage inspired many young officers. One evening, as the two sat watching the stars, Kiri said softly, "Your sacrifice saved more than me." Jonah smiled. "We saved each other." The galaxy was watching, and, slowly, hearts were opening. But the future was uncertain. Would mercy grow stronger than fear? Would kindness change the stars? Only time would tell. Months passed since Captain Jonah Hale's sacrifice. The galaxy was still buzzing with conversations about justice and mercy. On Veltraxis Prime, changes were slow but noticeable. Kiri had grown closer to Jonah. She no longer saw him just as the human who saved her. She saw him as a teacher and a friend. Together, they explored new ideas and learned about each other's worlds. Kiri's school was unlike any other on Veltraxis. Humans, aliens, and robots worked side by side to teach children not only math and science but also history, philosophy, and law. They talked about fairness, kindness, and the power of mercy. One day, Kiri asked Jonah, "Do you think I can really change the laws of Veltraxis?" Jonah smiled, despite missing his arm. "You already have started. You are part of a new generation, one that will shape the future." But change was not easy. The older generation still held tightly to the old ways. Many council members believed that strict laws kept peace and order. At a council meeting, Ves, the ancient leader, spoke again. "We must be careful. Mercy is important, but laws protect us all. We cannot forget that." Lana, the older Veltraxian woman, stood up. "Captain Hale's act showed us something new. Strength is not only in power, but in compassion. We should find balance." The debate went on, with voices both for and against change. Meanwhile, Jonah returned to his peacekeeping work. His new prosthetic arm gave him strength, but his true power was his example. Young officers looked up to him, inspired to be more than just enforcers of rules. Kiri often joined him on patrols, watching how he treated others with respect, even those who had made mistakes. One afternoon, they encountered a young alien boy caught stealing medicine to save his sick mother. The crowd expected the usual punishment, but Jonah stopped the guards. "We can help," he said quietly. Instead of punishment, the boy was given support, a doctor to care for his mother and a chance to learn new skills. The crowd was surprised. Some murmured disapproval, others nodded slowly. Kiri watched, her heart full. This was the kind of justice she wanted. News of the boy's case reached the tribunal. A new discussion began about changing the code. More young aliens and humans started to speak out. They wrote letters, held meetings, and shared stories of mercy. The older council members listened, though some still resisted. Kiri was invited to speak at a public forum. Nervous but determined, she told her story, from the day she was caught stealing to the moment Jonah gave his arm. She said, "We all make mistakes, but we can choose how to respond. Justice should help us grow, not only punish us." Her words touched many hearts. Jonah stood behind her, proud but humble. Slowly, laws began to change. The punishment for theft was softened in some cities. Instead of cutting off limbs, community service or education programs were introduced. Veltraxis Prime was not the only world shifting. Across the stars, other planets watched and reconsidered their own harsh laws. But change also brought challenges. Some radicals tried to stop progress. They spread fear and distrust. They warned that mercy would lead to crime and chaos. Jonah and Kiri knew the path ahead would be hard, but they believed in the power of hope. One evening, as the twin moons shone brightly, Kiri looked at Jonah and said, "You gave me a second chance. Now I want to give others the same." Jonah nodded. That is how change begins, with one person willing to stand for what is right. The galaxy was not perfect. Old fears still lingered and many battles remained. But the story of a human who gave his arm to save a child had sparked a movement of kindness, courage, and a new idea of justice. And for Kiri and Jonah, it was only the beginning. Months had passed since the first trial that changed Veltraxis Prime. Captain Jonah Hale's sacrifice was still fresh in the minds of many, and the galaxy was watching closely. One day, a new case arrived at the Veltraxian tribunal. A young alien boy named Sarek was accused of stealing medicine for his sick sister. The old law said the same punishment, removal of a limb, but the galaxy had changed. So had many minds. The tribunal chamber was filled with representatives from different species. This time, many humans and some alien leaders had come to observe. Jonah was among them, not as a captain but as a witness and citizen. Sarek's eyes were wide with fear. His small hands trembled as he waited. He was not like Kiri. He had no human protector, no one to offer a limb. The lawkeeper began. "Sarek is guilty of theft. Under Code 7A, the punishment must be carried out." Jonah stood and raised his hand. "I ask the tribunal to consider the circumstances." Sarek stole to save a life, not for greed. The council looked at him carefully. One elder Veltraxian said, "This is a difficult matter, but laws are made to protect society." Jonah nodded. Protection includes mercy. Justice is not only about punishment but also about healing and growth. He told the story of Earth's history, how humans had once been cruel to each other but changed through mercy, law, and compassion. The tribunal listened. Then a new voice spoke. Sarek's defense lawyer, a young woman named Nira. She argued, "For rehabilitation, not punishment. We can teach Sarek to be honest and help him care for his sister. Cutting off his arm will destroy his future." The tribunal debated long and hard. Some still wanted to follow the old law. Others were moved by the new ideas. Finally, the council leader Ves spoke. "We must balance tradition and progress. The punishment will be suspended. Sarek will serve in the community and receive support for his family." The crowd in the chamber erupted in quiet applause. Sarek's relief was clear, and his sister was safe. Jonah smiled, knowing the decision was a step forward. Outside, news of the trial spread quickly. Many praised the tribunal's choice. Some still worried about weakening the law, but the movement for mercy was growing. Kiri and Jonah met with Sarek and his family afterward. Sarek thanked Jonah quietly. "You saved me." Jonah replied, "We save each other." The second trial became a symbol of hope across many worlds. It showed that old laws could change, that justice could be fair and kind. At the Galactic Concord, other planets began reviewing their own harsh codes. Some asked for advice from Veltraxis. Kiri continued her studies, inspired more than ever. She wanted to be a lawyer, a protector of those who could not protect themselves. Jonah, despite his missing arm, stayed strong. His courage had sparked a revolution in hearts and minds. But challenges remained. Radicals tried to stir fear, warning that mercy would cause chaos. Leaders debated, and the galaxy watched closely. Still, the story of a human who gave his arm for a child, and the tribunal that chose mercy over punishment became a beacon. One evening, as Jonah and Kiri looked at the stars, Kiri asked, "Do you think one day there will be no harsh laws at all?" Jonah smiled softly. "Change takes time, but every act of kindness builds a better future." The galaxy was still a place of many dangers and challenges, but it was also a place where hope could grow, and hope was powerful. Years had passed since Captain Jonah Hale had given his arm to save Kiri. The galaxy was still changing. Laws were slowly becoming kinder, and more people believed in justice with mercy. Kiri was no longer a scared child. She had grown into a confident young woman, known across Veltraxis Prime as a bright legal scholar. She worked tirelessly to help those who had been treated unfairly. Her ideas blended the best of many cultures, strength and kindness. She often thought about Jonah. His sacrifice had shaped her life and many others. She kept a small replica of his missing arm on her desk, a symbol of courage and hope. Jonah had retired from active duty. His prosthetic arm was strong and smart, but it was the stories people told about his true arm that mattered most. He was remembered as a hero, not just for his bravery but for showing the galaxy what humanity could be. One day, Kiri received an invitation to speak at a galactic conference about justice and rights. Jonah was also invited. Together, they traveled to the grand hall where leaders from many planets gathered. Kiri stepped forward first. She spoke with clear words and passion. "Years ago, I was a child who stole food to survive. I was saved not just by law, but by a human's kindness. That kindness opened a door for change, understanding, and hope." She told the crowd about the trials, the debates, and the people who chose mercy over punishment. "Justice is not about pain," Kiri said. "It is about healing, fairness, and protecting all life. We can be strong without cruelty." The crowd listened quietly, moved by her words. Then Jonah stood. His voice was steady. "Giving my arm was not easy, but it was a small price to pay for a life. Humans believe that every person has value. We all have the power to change the world, one act at a time. The hall erupted in applause. After the conference, many planets asked Kiri and Jonah for advice on changing their laws. Veltraxis Prime's example was inspiring others. Back home, Kiri continued her work. She helped write new laws that respected life and encouraged help instead of harm. Children in schools learned about Jonah's sacrifice and Kiri's courage. The story became a legend, a symbol of what kindness could achieve. Jonah, now older, often visited Kiri's legal school. He shared stories and lessons with young students, teaching that courage was more than fighting. It was standing up for what was right. One quiet evening, Jonah and Kiri walked through the city gardens under the stars. Kiri looked at him and said, "Your arm saved me, but your heart saved many more." Jonah smiled. "We saved each other, Kiri, and that is the greatest gift." As they looked up at the sky, stars twinkled like hopes shining through the darkness. The galaxy was not perfect, but it was better. Because of one human's choice and one child's courage, the future was brighter, and that legacy would never fade.